Welcome, folks. It's Robert Waterhouse here. Thank you for joining us here today. We're going to give a few more minutes for folks to get into the room here, and then we'll get going. All right, we'll get going. Anyone else that comes on, we'll have to kind of follow up as we go. So welcome to the In-Vehicle Monitoring Systems and Human Performance presentation. We have Mr. Emerson Close from Chevron today that will be presenting to us. And yeah, we'll just go through some background information. There's a bunch of interactivity in this session. We have some poll questions along the path. And we also want to encourage, chatting, raising your hands, things like that. Certainly, as the session goes along, add questions in that are coming to your mind so that we can get to them later on. We may address some at the time, or we may hold off until the end. Generally, we tend to wait to the end and then answer questions there, but depending on the nature of the question, we might address it at the time. Okay. A couple things. You can give us feedback even right now. Within the participant screen, you have some functionality in there. There's a yes, no, slower, faster kind of buttons. Right now, relative to any IT problems, if you have IT problems, we have Andrew Davis on the line. If you specifically want to message him directly in the chat function, then he will specifically reach out to you and help you with any IT problems you may be having with sound, things like that. If anyone could just sort of indicate right now where they're at from a perspective of sound in this presentation. Can you hear us clearly? Can you see the screen? Indicate yes or no based on your current state, and do that now, and that'll give us an indication of who to reach out to who's having challenges. So I'll just give you a second to do that. The other aspect of if you're calling in, if you have a number and it's not clear, you might be able to, if you log in particularly, you can go in and actually name who you are, and that's always handy just to if it's not clear, so then we know who we're talking to. It's not some symbol or some number, right? It could be Joe or whatever the case might be. So just looking at what we're getting here, we have a bunch of yeses, we don't have any nos, so that's good. Yeah, if you just hit the participant screen, you can see there's some information at the bottom there that you can click. All right, so Mr. Emerson Close is our guest speaker here today. Emerson is a motor vehicle safety advisor at Chevron Canada. He's responsible for road safety across the company's Canadian operations. Following a short career working in law enforcement for the Saskatchewan Highway Transport Patrol, Emerson transitioned into the energy industry, bringing with him a passion to improve road safety. Emerson has held a variety of roles within oilfield service companies and multinational energy companies. He uses his skills as a collision reconstructionist to develop proactive measures in reducing road safety risk. And so we'd like to welcome Emerson to the presentation. And at this point, Emerson, I'll just stop sharing, and if you want to pull up your screen, we can transition over to your PowerPoint.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert. Can you hear me? Is it working?
Yep. I don't see your screen yet, though. Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
Yeah, just put it in presentation mode because we just see the sort of black sort of notes view, if you will. You might want to do that toggle.
That one worked?
Not yet. Try again. Can you click up at the top there on the, yeah, up on the left there where it has,
This is embarrassing, Robert. It says it's green. It says I'm sharing.
oh, you are. It's just you need to go to the screen and,
Oh, I have to.
set the duplication piece because it's showing the notes view version. There you go.
There we go.
Swap.
Is that
Yeah,
better?
yeah. Click that swap button and it should move it over.
Is it the right one now?
No, not yet. Try that again. Maybe try the other one if the other button, if it doesn't, the one duplicate slideshow button. Like the same one.
Is it still the same one? Because I hit swap.
Yeah, try that. Click the bottom one, the duplicate one. Yeah, that one. Can you click that? There.
Oh no.
No, we're having some issues. It's okay. Yeah, no, we don't see your screen right now. I can run it for you if you want. Yeah, just give me a second and I'll oh wait, here we go. See if it pops up. There we go. Perfect. You're good to go.
It doesn't want to give me my notes page though.
You could try the swap feature and see if you can.
Can you bring it up for me, Robert? I do not know what is going on my computer.
No worries. Can do. Give me 2 seconds there. It's okay. We got to be flexible in this world. You know, we're living in an interesting times, so flexibility and being able to adjust on the fly is what the world's about now. And let me see here. Zoom. Share screen. Oof. All right. Okay, how are we doing?
Perfect. Okay, I can see it. Hopefully everybody else can. Sorry for the technical difficulties. As Robert said, my name is Emerson Closen. I'm the Motor Vehicle Safety Advisor for Chevron Canada. I support all of our road safety initiatives throughout our Canadian operations, primarily in Alberta. And then I also support our business units in the US, in Texas and California, and assist our counterparts down there. And what we're going to talk about today is two topics that don't historically go together. People don't usually think of them together, and that's human performance and road safety. But we've integrated the two and seen some pretty good success in changing our approach to road safety by looking at human performance. So the first part, I'm kind of just going to go over human performance and what it means and what some of the principles and how it works are. And then we're going to jump into how to integrate some ideas how to integrate human performance into IVMS. So if we want to jump to the next slide, it's kind of just about human performance, and it really is just about a philosophical shift in thinking. Human performance is a whole new way to think about and improve how your people, your work systems, culture, equipment, and processes all interact. And the common denominator between all of these things is people. They're the common center point. And without people, we don't really have systems. We don't have a culture. Our equipment can't function. And at the center of any process truly is people. So human organizational performance or human performance is kind of at the center of how we do business. And it's something that is a little bit difficult for some organizations to kind of think about and try to incorporate it first, because it's not and it can't be a safety initiative, and it can't be viewed as a program or a single process or another standard, because human organizational performance connects all of these components in every aspect of your business And then how you use it to proactively reduce human failure is how it succeeds. So human performance is not just a safety thing, and it's not just another, it's not just another program. It really is changing how your organization functions. And it is a massively broad topic. So if anybody wants to talk about it offline or has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Today, we're going to really focus on human performance and integrating it into your road safety plan. But the next slide is going to talk about some of our guiding principles. And there's 7 main guiding principles that shape human performance. And the first one is that people will make mistakes. It's the first rule, and there's a reason for that. And that's because in human performance, we have to accept and understand that people will make mistakes. If we structure a system or we set a goal or we begin an operation with the expectation or with the desire that nobody will make a mistake, we're essentially setting ourselves up for failure. So with human performance, we have to accept people will make mistakes. We're in a business that's based on how people perform, and people make mistakes. And the other guiding principles for human performance are that we can predict error likely situations. And when we do a hazard assessment or when we're looking at a task and we use the human performance lens, we're really able to predict which situations will put our people in a position to make a mistake or where there's going to be an error trap. And then we can work on preventing some of those situations. In saying that, understanding how and why mistakes occur is also huge. Every organization typically performs an incident investigation after something happens, but there's not very many organizations that look at what we're doing right and why is it going right. We call that a learning team, and it's really looking at what are we doing right and why is it working, and then asking ourselves the how question. Everybody already asks why, and why is already part of everybody's instinct. Well, why is this working, or why did this happen? We've got incident investigations that are built on why. We've got the 5 why and the why tree. But if we can work on the how and we integrate the how into our business, it really helps to understand the human performance aspect, because the majority of incidents stem from latent conditions that are triggered by active errors. So when there's a latent condition and an error trap, that is usually when an incident or an event will occur. And without human performance, or really embracing human performance, is when we usually miss some of those underlying error traps, and we don't see them until after the fact. And if we don't ask how, and we just simply ask why, some of these error traps are viewed as a person making a mistake. And I think we all know what happens when we do an incident investigation or we look into what happened and we just stop at saying, well, the worker made a mistake. We're not really going to get anywhere. We're not going to improve the safety of our workplace if we stop at just blaming a worker. One of the other key components of human performance is understanding that organizational behavior influences individual behavior. And specific to a road safety program and an IVMS program, this is key. If your leadership or your field supervisors or your VPs talk about road safety and IVMS as just another safety initiative, or they don't believe in it, or they talk to their people about how to bypass the system, or they don't truly embrace what the system means, it's going to damage how well your system functions, because leadership response matters. And we have to think about the messaging that our people remember. We can show them a slide in a safety meeting, or we can send out a poster, we can send out an email signed off by the president of the company that's going to talk about IVMS is being rolled out and this is going to be a great system and everybody's going to like it. But at the water cooler or during a field visit, if one of your leaders says something disparaging about IVMS, or they're seen speeding, or they're seen driving and talking on their cell phone, they completely discredit all of the work that goes in behind the scenes to build an IVMS structure. So leadership response and organizational behaviors are massive. And I've found that a lot of the homework and a lot of the pre-work in rolling out some new initiatives is about leadership coaching. And And then the last guiding principle of human performance is about violations. So whether that's a violation of a rule or a violation of a procedure, a violation of a law, of a life-saving rule, of a tenet of operation, rarely these violations are malicious. We do not have employees and contractors running around on our sites intentionally making unsafe decisions. People are not they're not making unsafe decisions on purpose, and generally people are trying to do the right thing with well-meaning behaviors, and their intention is to get the job done. But when we have error traps, sometimes latent error traps, that's when we have events. And the importance in what we found the value of integrating human performance is that we look beyond blaming the person, and again, we try to understand the how. The next slide kind of talks about how it works, and there's going to be a couple survey questions come up, but one of the key components of human performance is we're going to reduce failure by redefining safety. We typically think of safety as a TRIR or a TRIF, and how many procedures do we have, and how many near-miss cards did we fill out, and that's really not safety. Safety is the presence of safeguards and the capacity of those safeguards. It is not the absence of incidents. We can do a job without safeguards and have no incidents, but that's really not a safe job. Because if the safeguards aren't there, the safeguards aren't able to function properly, we're really not safe. And you have to think about how this might look in your specific business. How do you define safety? How do your leaders understand what safety means? Because bow ties for us are very common, and we do bow ties through every aspect of our business to define and identify safeguards so that we can start measuring safeguards and evaluating what works and what doesn't work. So I'm just curious, Robert, if you want to pop up the first survey question. I'm just curious, and this is anonymous. We can't see anything, but I'm curious if people know what a safeguard is or what the definition of a safeguard is.
Give folks a few more minutes here to get sort of, counted, if you will. We have 10 of 17 people responding, so that's 58%. It's not too bad. We'll get a couple more in the next 3 or 4 seconds.
It's pretty awesome to see that there's so many people that are saying yes, they know what a safeguard is. The way that we define a safeguard, and I'm not sure if it's consistent, but we define a safeguard as a hardware and human action designed to directly prevent or mitigate an incident or an impact. And there's two really critical components of this, because we have to establish a safeguard, and then we have to sustain and assure that safeguard remains in place. And one of the key components of embracing human performance is if a safeguard in your system relies on a person, that person, the safeguard needs to function 9 times out of 10, and people are not going to do the right thing 90% of the time. So if our only safeguard in a system is a person doing the right thing, we really need to take a look at whether or not that safeguard is effective. And then we talked a lot about latent conditions, and I think there's another poll question on latent conditions. And I'm curious, again, if anyone is aware, totally understand what latent conditions are.
It's an interesting mix, really. I think some people are in the yes, some people in the no, some people unsure. It's kind of maybe half in the yes, and then the other two are sort of
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, Robert, because latent conditions are one of the key components of human performance, because we talk a lot about error traps, and a latent condition ties directly into that. And the way that we define a latent condition is that it's an undetected deficiency in the organization or the system that lies dormant and can provoke errors and create gaps in the safeguard. So if we've created a safeguard, like I just talked about, a safeguard that relies solely on a person doing the right thing, the latent condition of that safeguard that's going to cause it to fail is that the human is expected to do the right thing. And human performance has shown us, and one of the number one guiding principles, that people make mistakes. So a latent condition can really defeat a safeguard if it's the sole deciding factor between that safeguard functioning and not functioning. And I can give an example. We did a bow tie. I did a bow tie for our motor vehicle safety in Canada, and the worst case scenario is a motor vehicle crash, a fatal motor vehicle crash. And when we do the bow tie, we really only have on the left side of the bow tie, on the mitigative side or the preventative side, we have one safeguard, and that's the safety technology that is required in our vehicles that we have an internal requirement for, because those safety technologies, the automatic emergency braking and the collision avoidance, that is going to function better than a person is going to function to prevent a fatal motor vehicle crash. And so safeguards and latent conditions are really important in human performance, but some of the other things that are kind of guiding principles in how it works is to expand our thinking. And this again is going back to the why and include the how. And we need to expand from a blame approach with why and start including the people approach of how. How did this happen? Instead of just saying, why did this happen, and going down a blame path. And then the way we build our systems and kind of what we target, we need to build error tolerant defenses and error tolerant systems, because embracing human performance is accepting that people make mistakes, and we need to design our systems so that when somebody makes a mistake, the system will catch it. And then the way that we focus our energy is targeting serious incidents and fatalities, or potential serious incidents and fatalities. Because part of accepting people making mistakes is part of accepting that we're going to have incidents. And where we direct our attention and what we focus on is on those serious incidents. Yes, people are going to have, a pinched finger or a slip, trips, and fall, but if those are not serious and do not have the potential to be serious or fatal, it may not be the best place to direct our attention. When we talk about that in a road safety perspective, people are going to have speeding events, and we have to accept that that's okay. People are going to have braking events, and we have to accept that that's okay. But we want to make sure we focus on the serious driving events and the serious risk portfolio that people present. And we'll get into a little bit more of that later. The next slide talks about performance modes, and this is in human performance. There's essentially three performance modes that people operate in. So there's skill-based mode, which is when somebody's performing a task that's quite simple and they're familiar with, and it really doesn't require very much conscious attention. And the error rate is about 1 in 10,000. And when an error occurs, it's usually due to inattention. Then there's rule-based mode, which is when a person is performing a task and they're following a series of steps or applying a known rule, whether that's written or unwritten. They're somewhat familiar, medium familiarity and attention, and the error rate is about 1 in 1,000. And if there's an error, it's usually due to a misinterpretation. And then there's knowledge-based. And knowledge-based is when there's a task that requires a lot of attention to problem solve or troubleshoot, and the person performing that task has a low familiarity with how to execute. The error rate is between 1 in 2 and 1 in 10, and it's usually, human performance is telling us that it's usually due to a wrong mental picture. And one of the things with performance modes is they're very specific to an individual person performing an individual task at an individual time. And we use these performance modes to try and identify how frequently an individual will perform a task or has performed a task, and where will their attention level be when they're completing a task. And so when we talk about kind of the error rate, we think about, well, skill-based is probably where we want all of our people, but that's not entirely true. If we take a look at the next slide and we take a look at where people are in knowledge mode versus skill mode, skill mode, they're very familiar, but they're not paying any attention. So when we think about driving, if somebody's in skill mode while they're driving, they almost start relying on unconscious autopilot mode to control their vehicle and to drive down the road. And an error can be something as simple as turning on your high beam lights instead of turning on your windshield wipers. But another error that is latent that's going to pop up and we're not going to identify it until later in the fact is when somebody's operating in skill-based mode and they're driving, they may not identify fatigue and they may not identify that their attention is quite lacking because they're on that autopilot mode, and their perception reaction time to a crash is going to go from the average of 1.6 seconds to 3 or 4 seconds. And if you are traveling at highway speed and your perception reaction time goes up to 3 or 4 seconds, it doesn't sound like a lot, but at 110 kilometers an hour, your perception reaction time increasing is absolutely the difference between hitting a moose and avoiding a moose. And if we think about somebody driving in rule-based mode, this is really where we want people to be. We want people to be in rule-based mode because they're following the laws and the rules of the road. They're consciously aware of what they're doing. They're actively paying attention. And an error is going to be maybe following a little bit too closely, maybe speeding because they don't, there's a misinterpretation. They don't know exactly what the speed limit is where they are, but they're paying attention. And knowledge base is going to be maybe a new driver or somebody in a brand new vehicle or a different vehicle for the first time, where they are very unfamiliar with what they're doing, and there's high attention to detail, but that high attention to detail is what's going to cause an event. And the next slide, we talk a little bit more specifically about knowledge mode, because knowledge mode presents the highest risk. And it's okay, because in the field, a lot of the work that we do is in knowledge mode. But the importance is embracing human performance and understanding that our safeguards are in place and we know what we need to focus on. So a task may be very routine for the organization, but for that individual at that time on that lease, that task may become a task they're executing in knowledge-based mode. And if the potential of the consequence, if the potential consequence is severe and we're in knowledge mode, that's where it's important that our people understand human performance and they go, hold on, I'm operating in knowledge mode. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm asking, I have more unanswered questions than answers, and I need to stop. I need to take a pause. And that's part of human performance is if we understand the modes, or we just even understand why people make mistakes and how people think, and kind of embrace that everybody's going to be a little bit different, it's going to help us improve our safety, because we can't just simply say we're never going to operate in knowledge mode. We're never going to get anything done. And so operating in knowledge mode reinforces the importance of safeguards, because people will make mistakes. And especially when people are operating in knowledge mode, they will make mistakes because there's more unknown. And there's a few questions, so you'll know you're in knowledge mode when you're problem solving and troubleshooting instead of using steps. So instead of executing tasks, you're looking at something and thinking, geez, how am I going to do this? You're in knowledge mode. If you find yourself unsure what to do, or you're performing a new task for the first time at a new location, you're in knowledge mode. If you are performing your task and you're feeling really anxious or uncertain and you're guessing about what you should do, you're in knowledge mode. And that's when you really need to take a pause and say, hold on, circle back, what are we going to do? And can we bump ourselves back into rule-based thinking, rule mode, or verify that we have strong safeguards in place to continue in knowledge mode? And the next slide kind of talks about some error traps. And when we talk about human performance and error traps, these are some of those latent things that are going to pop up, and they're divided into organizational, individual, task, and work categories. But as the number of error traps increase, so does the likelihood of an error. So if we're operating in knowledge-based mode and we've got really high time pressure, inadequate training, poor job planning, we've got maybe a fitness for duty concern, inadequate labels, and vague or poorly written guidance or procedures, from a human performance aspect, something is going to go sideways and it's going to go wrong, because we've introduced a whole bunch of error traps with no safeguards. But if we've got error traps and safeguards, we'll be okay, or the likelihood of us being okay is stronger. And then the other benefit of understanding error traps is because we can work on shaping this in how we do business. So if we understand organizationally that time pressure is time pressure, poor communication, poor job planning, that's an error trap that we can control in the organization level that's going to help our people execute their jobs safer, and that we can control to remove an error trap for our people in the field. That's where we focus our attention. And we make sure that people understand in dispatch or in the office, field supervisors, our job leaders, we make sure they understand when that pressure, when that error trap is created by them on site as an organizational factor, it is going to cause all of those individual factors to flare up. And we've created a massive error trap for our people. It's one of the key components of human performance. And the next slide just has some more error traps and some more examples of what they are. But one of the things about human performance is it's really understanding and accepting that people are going to make mistakes. But we also need to understand that we're all different. How we relate to one another is different. And some of us are going to be impacted by error traps differently. But that doesn't matter, because a safeguard, if it's a true safeguard and it's implemented properly, that safeguard should keep us all safe. It shouldn't matter if I react differently than Robert, because that safeguard is going to function and keep us both safe. So one of the things we do a lot of work on is understanding people's personalities and understanding how people react differently and what kind of coaching works well based on people's personality types. We use a system called eColors. If anybody has any questions on that, again, that can be a whole nother hour of conversation. But if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to share any information on that. Nothing in safety is proprietary. So if there's something that will help, I'm happy to help. But one of the things with human performance before we jump into the road safety piece is just really be aware of your own personal tendencies and try to be aware of the tendencies of others. You know, we need to understand that our tendencies are different, and that we unknowingly sometimes may influence and affect others. And it ties back to, organizations affect people and leadership response matters. And we do not want to be the cause of an error trap. We do not want to be the reason an error trap exists. But the next
one thing, Emerson, just to add that eColors is actually an app that you can download, and it's free. There's paid features within it, but it is something that's free, that's available out in the industry through your Apple Store and things like that. So definitely check it out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we use eColors. We've embraced it to the point that on the bottom of my emails, my eColors are there, yellow over red, and I've had to learn through eColors what some of my opportunities for improvement are, and how I interact and how I present and how I accept feedback. But it's also helped me manage my manager, because I understand that my manager has different eColors than me and reacts differently than I do. So eColors is something I definitely recommend. Chevron doesn't own it. I'm not endorsing it. Don't go buy it and then tell your boss it's because Chevron said so. That'll get me in trouble. But the next slide, we're going to kind of jump into human performance specific to road safety. And integrating human performance into your road safety program, 100% I'm confident in saying this, it will absolutely reduce risk. We've seen the increase in compliance in our business, and it will definitely have a trickle-down effect on the overall total cost of ownership to your fleet. The focus shouldn't be reducing cost in fleet, but I understand in the market today, that might be something that you need to talk to your leadership about and maybe to sell it. But the focus is on reducing risk. And it sounds a little bit strange to say, but accepting that people make mistakes while driving is the first step in reducing risk. Understanding and accepting, yeah, people in our business are going to have speeding events, and that's okay, is the first step in reducing your risk. But I'm curious, I think there's a couple of poll questions before we kind of jump into this. And the first one is anyone using currently an in-vehicle monitoring system, IVMS? And then why your organization is using IVMS?
starting to get some good responses there. Lots of people basically saying yes, about 73% using in-vehicle monitoring systems.
Yeah, and it's kind of encouraging, Robert. It's nice to see that there's reasons beyond compliance to client requirements, because working on the Chevron side, I know that we have people that get IVMS just strictly because we said so. And before Chevron, when I was at Shell, I know we had the same thing. People just got it strictly because we wanted them to have it. But one of the key components in integrating human performance into your IVMS is understanding what you want the system to be. And the next slide, we talk about changing. One of the key things to change is how you refer to the system. Because if you want your organizational risk relative to road safety to decrease, do you want an in-vehicle monitoring system, or do you want an in-vehicle mentoring system? Do you want a system that's going to catch people, or do you want a system that's going to coach people? And that's one of the very first things, if you're going to integrate human performance into your road safety plan, that you have to think about. Because if you want an in-vehicle monitoring system, you want Big Brother, and you want a system that's basically just going to track an asset, or in the back end capture something that a supervisor follows up on in 3 weeks. But if you want an in-vehicle mentoring system where we're going to have human performance and we're going to accept mistakes, it's going to work to eliminate some of those air traps, because we're going to have a system that's going to coach our people instead of a system that's going to catch our people. One of the other key components is the feedback and the coaching that system provides should be something that gives the driver, again, eliminating an air trap, should give the driver verbal feedback, give the driver verbal coaching. If we just have a system that beeps at them, if we have a system in our truck that just beeps at our drivers, or the system we just got rid of, which stopped speaking English, we're now creating an air trap. Because when our people are speeding or something happens and there's a driving event on the road, we want our mentoring system to tell them, check your speed. We want a system that's going to provide them an opportunity to change their behavior and get back into that safe operating zone. We don't want a system that beeps and then have our drivers paying even less attention to the road because they're trying to figure out why this thing's beeping at me. But these are just some things to consider when you're building your road safety plan. I don't think it's realistic to expect our drivers to know what every beep means, but that's why we want a mentoring system that's going to coach. And that coaching should be verbal if you truly want to embrace human performance. Some more program considerations on the next slide is from an organizational perspective, how do you structure your program? How do you coach your leaders to respond? And do you punish people when there's lack of use? So if somebody doesn't use the IVMS system or doesn't log in as a driver, or however your system functions, do you punish that lack of use? Or do you incentivize the use of the system, and do you incentivize low risk performance? Because one of the key things in human performance is understanding how people respond. And if we incentivize the use of the system and we incentivize low risk performance, because we truly believe that people have come to work to do the right thing, we're making it easier to do the right thing, and we've incentivized doing the right thing. And one of the things that, if you'll notice, is we've called it risk ranking, and that's because we want to focus on overall risk. We accept that mistakes are going to happen. We accept that people are going to have speeding events, and that's okay. So we want to focus on the risk. We want to focus on, if Robert drives 3,000 kilometers this month, what is his risk? And so a system and a program that embraces risk instead of individual events is what we want to focus on, because it's okay for Robert to have 10 speeding events in 3,000 kilometers. It's not okay to have 10 speeding events in 30 kilometers. And a system that identifies a risk and highlights the risk for you is a lot easier to manage than trying to send a supervisor a report because one of their people was speeding between Calgary and Edmonton on Highway 2. One speeding event between Calgary and Edmonton on Highway 2 is probably not very high risk. And one of the, again, touching on leadership response matters. Those responses shape our organizational response and shape how our organization goes and the direction that we're headed. And also we're going to shape individual behaviors far more than anything we can ever do or build into a program. So like I said, a lot of the back end work, if you're going to embrace human performance in your road safety plan, is going to be on leadership coaching, because the leadership response to some of these events is huge. The leaders need to understand that events are okay. Leaders need to understand that we focus on risk. And leaders need to understand what they say all the time matters. They cannot go to the water cooler as a leader and drop their professional face and show their personal face. And if they don't like IVMS and they show that personal face and they say that at the water cooler around some of their team, all of the hard work that went into promoting and showing the value of IVMS is out the window. Obviously, if there's an egregious speeding event, it'll be managed kind of as a one-off. And if somebody is captured on the IVMS doing 150, that's an individual speeding event that in itself is high risk and needs to be managed. But that should be by exception, not by norm, if we have a system that's coaching our drivers and functioning in a really strong place. And there's one poll on this slide, I think, right, Robert? And so I'm just curious, from where you think you are today in relation to human performance in road safety, where do you think your organization fits? Do you think that it's not going to work in your company? You're not going to look at it? You don't have anything yet and you're going to struggle? Maybe you've got a lack of leadership support. They're going to think human performance is this pie in the sky idea. Do you think you have a little bit and you're going to adopt it? Or do you think you've got it all?
We have 9 out of 17 people so far, so we're 52%. Get a couple more people in there to respond to the poll.
So I love that there's I was just about to say, I like that we have nobody that says they don't want to look at human performance, but one of the system considerations on the next slide, if you do want to kind of move forward with human performance or kind of integrate human performance, is again, focus on a system that's going to be coaching versus catching. I just transitioned all of our Chevron vehicles in Canada to a new system, and we're transitioning globally to a new system through all of our Chevron upstream and downstream business units. And the focus on our new system is coaching versus catching. We want a coaching system. We don't want a catching system. We want in-vehicle mentoring, not in-vehicle monitoring. And that's because we want to allow our people to have complete transparency to the data. We don't want people questioning what can my boss see, what can, what hidden things are in the back end that I have no visibility to. And so we've gone with a new system within the last 2 months that's completely transparent. There's nothing that I can see that a driver can't see. The leadership has complete visibility to everybody underneath them, both from a risk perspective and an event perspective. And it's made it really easy for leaders to know where their risk is. As soon as they open the app, it shows them, the very first screen, what risk their team is at. So it doesn't show them how many speeding events their team has had. It shows them what is the risk of your organization? What is the risk of your team? And as long as it's in the green, we've coached our leaders, as long as you've got a green risk score, it's fine. That's where we want to be. Low risk is where we want to be. It's a focus on reducing risk, and then it's really understanding how systems function with visibility and transparency, because we don't want a system that is really difficult to log into. We didn't want that. We wanted a system that's going to be completely transparent. And I think that's something that if you want to embrace human performance in your system, you really want to include transparency and visibility in how you do that, and how easy it is for your leaders to log into that. Because if it's another Power BI dashboard, or they have to be connected to VPN and log into 3 different things to see their team's risk score, the likelihood of leaders doing that is really low. But if it's an app that's on their phone that's readily available and all they need to do is open it, and they've got all the data right at their fingertips whenever they want it real time, they're a lot more likely to look at that and then manage it again real time. And then the next slide is just some IVMS and collision analysis. So this is my background in collision reconstruction. I like to try and think about what's the worst case scenario and how can we eliminate some of those latent conditions, some of those error traps. And one of the big ones is looking at a system. So whether your system now or you're looking at a new system, is you want a system that's going to be driver-centric, data-driven, and safety-focused. You want a system that is going to focus on coaching drivers to do the right thing, give them an opportunity to correct their behavior, and move forward. Because a true coaching system is not going to record a speeding event if the driver was coached and slowed down. Because there's no risk to that. If the driver was coached on speeding and slowed down, why do we want to record that? What's the value in recording that as an event? The driver did the right thing. So if we have a system that's focused around our drivers, and then a system that's focused around reliable data, that's another really big component. The system we had previously to our current system, the system we got rid of, had extremely unreliable data. And it's impossible to focus on reducing risk when we don't have good data. So it's really important to have good data coming in, and post-investigation, a strong IVMS system that has good data is almost invaluable. So when you're thinking about a new system, if you're looking at a new system, think about what kind of data you're going to get after an incident. Because if they tell you, oh, we'll give you, data for every 4 minutes of travel, when somebody's going down the highway at 110 and nothing's going wrong, that's probably okay. But if something goes wrong, data every 4 minutes is absolutely useless. So the closer you can get to second by second data, the easier it'll be to understand how and why an event happened if you, worst case scenario, have to investigate something. And then one thing in that safety focus is I think that it's extremely beneficial to include in your IVMS the ability to grow within the system. Is your system that you're using now or that you're looking at something that's been around for a really long time, is a little bit stagnant, or is it somebody that's kind of moving forward and having lots of evolution, got some new ideas? Some of the things that we're working with our current provider on is integrating in the future cloud-based cameras. So we're going to look at some forward-facing dash cams that will connect through the cloud with our IVMS system. And when a speeding event happens or a braking event happens, it's going to capture a small bit of video to go along with that. And then we're also looking at some facial recognition, fatigue recognition cameras that are facing the driver, but not capturing anything the driver's doing, but looking at their faces for signs of fatigue. And if the camera detects signs of fatigue, there's going to be verbal coaching on that. And it's going to record it as a fatigue event. And there's going to be some coaching on drivers to maybe that they need to take a break. And if there's multiple fatigue events, that will send a trigger to that driver's leader that says, hey, you've got somebody driving a vehicle that is really fatigued. And these fatigue cameras are kind of still in a stage where I'm not 100% confident to roll them out yet, but they're really exciting because they look for where, not only where if your eyes are open or closed, but kind of where your eyes are looking through the windshield and looking ahead. So just think about integrating a system that's safety focused and very forward thinking, because you want to work with a company that wants to work with you, and you want to work with a company that's going to help you get to that next level. And in today's environment, on the next slide, we kind of talk about some fleet benefits, because I understand cost is king, and there are real costs to IVMS. If you don't have it now, there's real cost to it. Every month it costs money. It's sometimes a little bit difficult to tie back some of the cost savings IVMS offers. But if you have access to your fleet data, a lot of times you can show pre-IVMS and post-IVMS how your repair and maintenance costs have gone down, how your operating costs for fuel has gone down. And then by virtue of those two things improving, your total cost of ownership is going to go down. So if you can reduce your repair and maintenance bill and reduce your total cost of ownership, it's a little bit difficult to measure, but it has the potential to completely eliminate the cost of a good IVMS system, because your vehicles are not going to be driven so hard that brakes are being done every 3,000 kilometers, and you're not burning fuel so hard because you've got a system that's coaching drivers to be operating in that safe zone, and and hopefully it's able to, if you need to justify the cost, hopefully that's some options. I don't want to talk disparagingly about any companies in particular about IVMS. I think all of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. We have gone with a system that is a little bit of a hybrid. So we've got, it's an app-based system that our contractors who drive their own vehicles are able to use strictly with an app. It doesn't require any hardware installed in their vehicle. That was really important for us. We couldn't, in good conscience, ask contractors driving their own vehicles to install a permanent hardwired device in their vehicle. When they aren't working for us, that's their vehicle and it's none of our business what they're doing. So an app-based system that they activate when they're working for us was ideal. And that's what we've gone ahead with. And then that same app-based solution, we were able to match up with a installed device in the vehicle that activates the app. So essentially what we have is our contractors running just an app, and then that same app in our Chevron vehicles is activated by a device that we plug into our Chevron trucks. So we have real-time visibility to the location of all our vehicles. In case one gets stolen, we can track it. But we also have that device installed in our work trucks activate the app, the same app that the contract folks are using, and then records data all in the same place. So we don't have two different systems that leaders are looking at to determine risk. We have one system, and it's been good. Like I said, we're just kind of at the beginning stages of rolling it out, but it so far has been what we're looking for. If anybody has any questions, Robert, I don't see that there's anything in the chat, but if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, ask in the chat or put your hand up. Hopefully this helps.
Yeah, I'm going to just bring up my my screen there. Down here a little bit. Yeah, so we do have a couple questions here. Thank you for that, Emerson. Lots of great information there. I really appreciate you going through this and giving us some of the background on some of these, you know, the human performance piece. We did have a question a while back from someone who was basically saying, how do you reconcile the lack of incident not equating to safety and the persistent push for metrics like TRIF, which qualify or disqualify contractors' ability to work for an organization?
Yeah, so we talked about this morning, Robert. So we still, we still are looking at pre-qualification of TRIF and TRIR, and we do look at those. But when we look at them, the focus is on how many of those events are serious or have the potential to be serious injury or fatality. And the last contractor pre-qualification that I did, they had a lot of events, and they told us, yes, we've had lots of events, but they gave us the breakdown, and we looked at it. It turned out that their number of events equated to a really strong safety culture because their people were reporting everything. Nothing was being hidden, nothing was being swept under the rug, and none of it was SIF. There was no SIF events. So yes, we might have some historical mindsets around TRIR and metrics, and zero incidents is what matters, but it's about shifting how we portray and how we message the safety culture of our organization, because we can have a bunch of incidents, but if none of them are actual or potential serious injury or fatality, we're operating in a really good place. I have my own opinions about TRIR and TRIF, and I know, Chevron's operating from a place where we're really focused on SIF, but I also know that there's other companies that all they care about is that TRIF and that TRIR number. And I would just hope that one day we can challenge them to look beyond that. Might not be the easiest. I know there's some people that think that TRIF and the TRIR are the be all end all, but
Well, yeah, good. Yeah, totally. And you kind of spoke to that a little bit around even just risk, right? I mean, you're focused on low risk. You're not focused on no risk. You get in a vehicle, there's always going to be risk there. One other question, just in relation to, your journey. I don't know if you can speak to any challenges around in-vehicle monitoring systems and human performance, and maybe with the change that you've done, is there any sort of learnings or things that came about that you went, oh, that's interesting, didn't see that coming?
I mean, on the tech side, everybody saw I'm obviously super techie. I can't even figure out how to share my screen. But when you move to a new system, that's the system we've gone to was built for Chevron Canada. Nobody else is running the system we have now, and obviously there's going to be more Chevron business units running it soon, but nobody else is running the system. So some of those tech glitches obviously sneak up out of nowhere, and you go, okay, well, I guess we have to work with this. But one of the biggest challenges in embracing human performance in our path was getting leaders to respond in the right way and getting leaders to understand that events are fine. Um, some of these old school people that have been with the organization for 30 years, they'll look at somebody's driving score and go, well, yeah, you drove 3,000 kilometers in the month, but you had one speeding event. That's unacceptable. Tell me why you had that speeding event. So coaching our people to understand that, risk is the focus. The events are not the focus. Was a little bit of a challenge, and some people had a little bit of a learning curve, but we really coached them on, you want to express commitment to learn. You don't use judgmental phrases. You assume that people are doing the right thing all the time. You don't automatically assume somebody made a mistake on purpose or suggest punishment. We want to focus on how. We don't really want to ask who or why questions right away. That's what we learned, and it's ongoing. We've only had this system for a month, 2 months.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that, folks. I think in the interest of time, just to keep on schedule, we've got about 1 minute left here. We want to get everyone off to meetings that they have to go to and things of that nature. Just a couple upcoming webinars we have. We have one on October the 6th with the Movember group. Mitchell is going to be speaking about mental health and certainly some great stuff there that ties to oil and gas. Energy-based fire prevention webinar on the 7th. 14th, some stuff on winter driving, obviously timely. On the 28th, we have some micro learning life-saving rules, little video rollout that's going to happen. And then on the 3rd of November, we have a webinar on dropped objects prevention. And you should have all received an email for feedback. If you didn't, this is the link right here. Certainly encourage you to give us feedback, tell us what we're doing, that we could do better, or topics you might want to hear about us present on, or if you know really great speakers and you say this person rocks, you got to get them on here. That's the kind of information we want to hear, stuff that we can action. And yeah, I guess just in closing, thank you very much, Emerson, for your presentation today. Excellent information. Topical that applies particularly the human performance stuff across the whole organization and the whole industry, as well as in relation to in-vehicle monitoring systems as well, and just how important they are and can be part of that solution. So thanks very much, everyone, and everyone have a great day. Let's just see if there's, I'm just going to stop the recording at this point, but if we might have some time, we can do some additional questions for any questions that are in there. So just give me 2 seconds here.
I put my email in the chat, Robert, if anybody wants to reach out offline.